Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Championship Leadership Podcast. We got Dave Daley here from San Diego, California today. Appreciate you being here, man. Thank you.
Hey, man. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always love kicking our conversation off with the first question. Championship Leadership's the name of the podcast. What comes to mind for you, or what does that mean to you when you hear championship leadership?
It's so interesting, man. I just did a post on my social media this morning about
Really?
leadership. Yeah. And to me, leadership and what I posted, and I truly mean this, is a leader needs to create that 3D vision, purpose, and goals. You need to be able to leave enough breadcrumbs, right? That now they can start to follow, they can start to envision, they can start to picture it, and then they can decide whether or not they're going to buy into this, whether or not. It's not about you forcing them. It's about having the confidence, the inner confidence, knowing that this is the 3D vision, right? This is the 3D purpose. These are the goals that we're going to now go after. You have the choice, either come along or that's okay. You can move somewhere else. And I think that's really the key when it comes to leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah, sometimes easier said than done, but yeah, that's the vision, purpose, and goals. I love that. I just wrote that down. So, tell us a little bit more about you. So we've got Dave Daley, the Monster Motivator. Like, how did you get to where you are? I know I was taking a look at your website and your story, incredible story, ton of experience in the business world. Just like many entrepreneurs, you've taken some lumps, but you always continue to rise to the top, continue to move forward. So maybe you could just let us know a little bit more about you, your path, and how you've gotten to where you are today and what you're up to today.
Yeah, man, I'll bring you all the way to the very beginning.
Awesome.
I was put up for adoption at birth. First 18 months of my life, I was in an orphanage in North Philly. I'm from the East Coast. It probably takes people about 3 seconds to realize that.
Yeah, right.
And left back in the second grade, diagnosed with ADD, said I had a learning disorder. Never graduated high school. At 19, I'm sitting in a jail cell looking at 8 to 10 if things don't go my way. And that's just the first 19 years. But I was fortunate enough to have been brought up and raised in that push-pull environment, meaning that the professionals said there must be something wrong with me. I must be broke because I can't learn in that cookie cutter mode. But my mom never bought into that. She never accepted that. And not only didn't she accept that, she would tell me from the time that I could remember that I was a gift from God, right? That whatever I wanted to do, I could do. So again, that push-pull environment. But yeah, so take it a step further. Over the last 20 plus years, have been fortunate enough to have built and sold 3 companies in 3 different industries. But more importantly, I also crashed one to the ground. And when I speak from stage and I have that intro and we do the Q&A after, everyone wants to know 2 things. Why am I sitting in a jail cell at 19? And what business did I crash to the ground? And I think that's so important for entrepreneurs, business owners, personal brands to understand the environment, the landscape that we live in now. People want, in order for you to relate, the transparency is that vehicle, right? And in order to be transparent, you have to be able to embrace your journey, right? So the things that I learned in that business, losing $500,000 in that business that I crashed to the ground, Nate, there's not a university in this world that could have taught me what I learned in that period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what are some of the biggest lessons that you learned from that?
Oh man. So people ask me, especially, so it was a restaurant, it was a burger joint, right? And what I tell people, and it was local here. So I ran into a lot of people after the fact, and people would say, man, how did you bounce back from that so quick? How were you able to just keep moving forward? And here's what I did. And I tell this to people, and it's so important, and you can only answer this for yourself. I asked when I closed the doors, I ask myself this question, and only I can answer the truth. If I didn't do it at that time, would I regret it? And if my answer was yes, I won. And my answer was yes. Now I can move on. I'm good, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to leave with regrets. That's so if I didn't do it at that time, honestly, I would have regretted it. So I'm good. And also understanding, right, where I did go wrong, right? And owning that. And here's what I tell people is my other businesses, I followed this recipe. Identify your strengths and identify your weaknesses so you can enhance those weaknesses with the people and the systems, right? So now you can triple down on your strengths. With the restaurant, I thought I had that all in place and I didn't. So learning what I didn't do, right, before is a huge lesson. But the main lesson is that regret. If you can answer that question, look yourself in the mirror, you won.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a critical question to ask when you did, right? Because I think a lot of people they tend not to worry about the regret until it's like too late, right? When they're towards the end of their life and they're looking back and now they're thinking about it, right? Now they're wishing they would have done something differently. But to have the perspective to ask in that moment is a powerful place to be.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Where did it come from? I don't know. It just came to me. You know, it just came. And I think also I think another big key to success in life, personal and professional, what I've learned being on this planet this long, is when you approach things with pure intention, you will win. Eventually you will win. So I think that's so key.
Yeah, absolutely. Who are some of the championship leaders, coaches, mentors that you've had that have impacted your life? And really more so, you know, what is it about those folks, the characteristics, the traits, and maybe what have you taken to help mold who you are as a person, as a leader?
Man, it's awesome. I got the chills, man, because that's my main keynote. I have a 90-minute keynote. It's called the Tommy Story.
Okay.
And I'll give everyone a quick overview of what it is. So I'm born and raised in Jersey. My family's from South Philly. When I got kicked out of high school, you know, it took me a little while, but I realized I had the entrepreneurial DNA. But before that, when I got kicked out of high school, I went home. My dad said, and just give you a little context of this, I was adopted at 18 months old, but my parents had adopted me were in their 40s. So they were 2 generations ahead. I was blessed to be raised with that World War II generation. He was 82nd Airborne, World War II. So his philosophy was lace up your boots, get to work. Nobody wants to hear it. Yeah. So when I came home and said that I got kicked out of high school, and he says, all right, so now what? How are you going to pay your bills? What are you going to do? And I thought, man, that's a good question. What am I going to do? Right. So anyway, fast forward the clock. My dad had retired. He moved up to upstate Pennsylvania. I wasn't going to go up there in the middle of nowhere. So I wound up renting a room for my buddy's mom. And long story short, I was in construction and I did everything, man. Yeah. Framing, block work, brickwork, ironworkers union, laborers union, landscaping, you name it. If it was physical, I did it. So we were in a huge downturn. Banks weren't lending. I mean, construction was drying up. At that time, there was no internet. That's how old I am. So I'm going through the help wanted ads, right? I need to make some, I need to eat, right? I need to pay some bills. And I'm just going through this help wanted. And all of a sudden I see this ad and it says outside sales, no experience necessary, and we'll train. I'm like, outside, I don't even know what that is. Right. I know one thing, I have no experience and they're willing to train me. Let me try this. Long story short, I answered the ad. Never in my life, I had no idea what to do. I'm scared to death. I answered the ad. It winds up to be a local company that sells copiers and fax machines B2B. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I answer this ad. I go down the next day and I'm sitting in the lot. I'm shaking. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't belong here, right?
Yeah.
Everyone looks so successful. They got suits on and, right? Long story short, the owner of the company, his name is Tommy. And when I went in for the interview, the general manager, or general manager at the time, Mike, was interviewing me. He stopped the interview like 10 minutes in, and I'm just answering the best I can. I have no idea, Nate, what I'm doing, right?
Right.
All of a sudden, he goes, "I'll be right back," leaves. Here comes Tommy. He introduced me. Tommy's the owner. Now, I'm from the East Coast. I'll give everyone a little visual of Tommy. Tommy was a combination of Danny DeVito and Joe Pesci. So Tommy would give you that look, right?
Yeah.
And you'd start to shake. So long story short, Tommy saw something in me, and he saw himself in me, and I saw Tommy. I saw me and Tommy 15 years ahead. Here's why. Tommy was a kid from the neighborhood that wasn't supposed to make it. And you know what I saw, Nate? I saw that Tommy's company, everyone that worked for Tommy had the degrees on the wall, right?
Yeah.
Tommy had the degree from the street.
Mm-hmm.
And then he taught me how to be able to, I was doing 40 to 50 cold calls a day in Center City, Philly, right? He taught me how to do that. He taught me how to be able to walk into any business, any residential home, look you in the eye, shake your hand, introduce myself, and share with you how I can help you. That is the 30,000 foot view of the Tommy story.
Yeah, I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
Do you? Is he still around?
You know what? I don't. He probably is, but I've been out here, and that was 1989.
Yeah.
90.
Okay.
So, and I worked for him for a while and then moved on.
Sure.
And we left on good terms. But here's what's funny, because people ask that too. No, I didn't stay in contact. If Tommy was listening right now or in the audience when I'm doing a keynote and I share that story, you know what he'd come up to me and go, what are you talking about? Like he had it's just who he was, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I literally, for the first 2 weeks, I'm in his car and we go to business, and he goes, "Look, kid, just listen to what I'm saying. Just follow my lead." I'm like, all right. I'm behind him like this, and he's doing the pitch. Then we get back in the car, and then he coached me, right?
Yeah, right.
And then he just threw me out to the wolves and said, "You'll be all right."
Yeah. I love it. That's a great story. What's ahead for you? What's the vision and the impact that you want to make? I think championship leaders got great vision and this courage to be able to take action on that. What's ahead for you? Maybe short term, next 5-10 years. What are you up to, and what's the impact you want to make?
Oh man, so I'm glad you asked me that. Right behind me, the pit crew. Anybody that knows me or follows me for any length of time, I'm a huge animal advocate. I love animals, and particularly dogs, and particularly I'm a pit bull advocate and supporter. So we have this company that we're just launching and starting to build, and it's going to be a reality show, and it's going to be based around educating and locating and breaking up underground fighting rings, hate dogs, and abuse cases, ignorance cases, and we have a whole business plan behind it. We just launched our Facebook group about a week ago. We have over 400, we're right around 400 members right now, and so that's my jam, man. So for the next and that's going to be completely married to my personal brand, Dave Daley, the Monster Motivator, and so we have a lot of great things coming up with that.
That's awesome. So yeah, where did that come from? Where's this love for animals, pit bulls, dogs?
You know what? Now I'll take you all the way back to the very beginning as well. So my mom and dad has now since passed away, and that my second keynote is the power of perception. But the reason I say that is when my dad passed away right at the end of 2016, and my mom passed away 4 months later, in the beginning of 2017. Okay. And after my mom passed away, I actually, had to go through all their stuff and take care of everything. And I found this box, and it had the information on the adoption agency in North Philly, and all this information. Long story short, I'm going through the box and I see this note, handwritten note from the orphanage to my mom, and they were, I guess, given a little bit of back explanation on me and I guess my personality. I don't know. And in that note it just says, and every time a dog or an animal comes up on the screen, I guess the TV or something like that, he just smiles. So I can explain it this way, man. It's just in my DNA.
Yeah.
I love animals and have always connected. And the reason that pit bulls are, and I've been in this, I don't know if you could see this.
Yeah,
or
I
not.
can see it. Yep.
Okay.
Oh,
but I don't know if this right here is taken. So that was my dog Wyatt. I competed with him up and down the East Coast in weight pulling, agility, bite work. I work with the Philly Police Department and canine units and things like that. That's been a huge passion of mine. So I've been in that dog world in many different levels in so many areas. And then on top of that, I've owned and operated and sold a fire restoration business back east. So I've spent 17 years in the most violent cities that this country knows: Camden, Newark, North Philly, Southwest Philly, Trenton. And if anybody wants to Google Camden, New Jersey in the 90s, it was the most violent city per capita. So I've seen some pretty wild stuff. So for me, where this really stems from is the love of animals. I love pit bulls because I believe, Nate, that every human being should strive to be what a good pit bull is. That is courageous, loyal, dead game. That means do or die. Yeah. With a huge heart. Yeah. If you could hit those 4 marks, I consider you a pit bull. That's why in every business, it's part of my brand. And then to take it even a step further is I want to educate. I want to turn the lights on for these underground dogfighting rings, and particularly bait dogs, where they come from and the abuse that's involved in all this. And most people don't realize that a lot of these bait dogs come from the free Craigslist pictures that people put up for their dogs, and then also pulled right from their backyard or from their cars, right? So their pets, their family members become these bait dogs, and it's horrendous stuff. So that's where it really stems from me. And so we're actually, I have with my show Brand Builder TV, which you're going to be on. We've had some awesome military, ex-military, Navy SEALs, Special Forces, Green Berets. So I have a real good friend of mine, 22 years Force Recon, Robert Blanton. So I have really great access to those type of people that we want to put together ground soldiers on top of this, and literally work with local law enforcement to really make a big difference, both on the physical and the digital world. Yeah. That's incredible. I love it. Yeah. What's a turning point or a critical moment in your life? Kind of that fork in the road moment where obviously you made the decision you have because it's got you where you are today, but had you not, things could look very different for you. I think a lot of listeners, business owners, entrepreneurs are probably in that spot, and it takes courage as a leader to be able to listen to that intuition, that gut, whatever you want to call it. Yes. To know which way to go and then to own it and execute on it. Is there a moment that kind of sticks out for you that you could share? Yeah, there's actually 2. Yeah. Actually a few, but The first one is definitely finding myself in a jail cell at 19 years old.
Yeah.
And once I got through that, that kept me out of so much trouble that I would have got in, right? Because I experienced that, and it's a dark, dark place, man. So I did not want to go back there. So that, right, at 19, 20, 21 years old, definitely shifted me, number one. Number two, and I have this in my book called Fearless is Bullshit, is my motorcycle accident. So my first business that I built and sold was a public adjusting firm outside of Philly. And I had it for 5 years. And I'm approaching right around my third year. And I just get this something in me, man, that I just want to move on, right? I'm ready to move on. But I had that old conditioning, right?
Yeah.
You didn't graduate high school. You're sitting in a jail cell at 19. You're not supposed to win. Suppose you got lucky. Suppose you can't do this again. So fast forward the clock. I'm married at the time. My wife says, let's take a, and I'm going back and forth with this struggle, right? And it's really a fear barrier. And she said, look, let's just give yourself a break. I'm beating myself up over this. Let's take our long weekend up at my parents' place in Vermont. And blah, blah. Long story short, we get there Friday afternoon. I jump on my brother-in-law's bike, lose control, hit a boulder, broke everything on this side, punctured a lung, and intensive care for 4 days. Okay. When I get out, I had to go through some waiting for the ribs to heal and the lung to heal. And I realized life checked me. Life said it could change in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, right.
You're not guaranteed tomorrow. And if you are, you might not be guaranteed who you are. I could have been paralyzed or dead. And that was a wake-up call. A year and a half, within that year, the 5th year, I sold that company, started my fire restoration company, and then since have never had that fear barrier again.
Yeah. Powerful. Wow.
Yeah,
it's great. I love to hear your stories. I love to hear the lessons that you've learned, but also it just makes you think a little bit about how important that is and how many people really do. There's a lot of those instances or situations that happen and they don't see the gift inside of those to help them continue through life. And they just kind of let it pass by, and it's a lost opportunity. And it really takes, like you mentioned, some of it seemed to just be kind of natural, come to you for whatever reason. But I know there was a time in my life where those things would come and go in my life, and I wouldn't see them for what they truly were to help me to continue to move forward. But it's a powerful place to be when you can continue to just extract those gifts from everything that's happening around you.
And you know what? And here's what I love to share from stage is this, and we can go a little bit deeper on what you just said, and I agree with you 100%. I have the other keynote called The Power of Perception. And I'm going to ask everybody in this audience, including you, to answer this question. Have you, at this point, made it through the worst days of your life? Have you, at this point in your life, made it through the worst days of your life?
Yeah,
obviously, yes.
Up until this point, yeah.
Right, because you're here, right? So number one, that's what we all have in common. Number two, is there ever a better feeling than being in the flow? If you look back, there's times where you're like, this feels so good.
Yeah.
The problem is so many people are conditioned to wait for that shoe to drop. But there's two things that we all have in common. We've all made it through our worst days up to this point.
Yeah.
And we've all had that feeling of being in the flow, right? Yeah. And when you can identify being in that flow, figuring out for yourself how to get back there on a more consistent basis, now you're going to win, right? Because you're winning in the now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So that, and that, so
I love it.
I love that, man.
Yeah. Powerful. I want to respect your time. So we'll start wrapping it up here, but one last question for the listeners. If there were one or two things you could give the listeners that if they were to implement those today in their life, it would help move them forward today, what would that be?
Number one, surround yourself with the right people, right? And don't be afraid to audit your inner circle, your outer circle, and don't be afraid to fire, right? And hire. That's huge. And this one, there's not even a second place, man. Identify your strengths, identify your weaknesses, enhance those weaknesses with the people and the systems so you can now triple down, quadruple down on your strengths, because there's a big difference. And Nate, you know this, we get thrown up on every single day on Instagram about hustle and grind.
Yeah, right.
All day long, hustle, grind, hustle, grind. Every other person has their own apparel, grind, hustle, grind. But here's what people have to understand. There's a big difference between hustle and grind and inspired action. Hustle and grind, that flame will burn out.
Yeah.
Inspired action, that flame never dies. Next answer. Next question, and here's the answer to that. Great. How do you get to inspired action? Simple. Reverse engineer it. Enhance your weaknesses so you can triple down on your strengths. When you can get to the point where you're tripling down on your strengths, that's inspired action.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. I appreciate that. That's great. Excuse me. So what are some ways that we can find out more about you and what you got going on in your life?
Definitely would love to, anybody that's interested, take a look at it. The PIP crew group on Facebook, we're growing, we're expanding, we're getting the word out there, number one. And on my personal brand, I'm real easy to find. I'm on all the platforms, major platforms. Dave Daley, DALEYMM, like Monster Motivator.com. And Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it, we're there. And would love the support for the PIT crew. And stay tuned, man. There's a lot coming up.
Absolutely. And so the book, can we access that on your website, Amazon, or where is that?
Yeah, Amazon.
Okay.
Let me show you real quick. Hold on. I just, it's another important message here, man, that you just brought up. And I want to be able to share this real quick. So this book was written in 2016. And the original title was Knockout Fear in the First Round, right? But my message and my brand has evolved, right? To where I didn't identify with that as much, but the content is as powerful as I can share. So nothing changed on the inside, but the title did. So now it's my message and brand has evolved to fearless is bullshit, right? It's not about being fearless. It's about identifying that fear, having the courage to break through that fear, get yourself on the other side so you can become courageous. And in this book, it's called, I want to teach you how to get your lunch money back from the biggest bully, and that's fear. Right?
I love it.
So, you get Amazon, but it would be under Knockout Fear in the First Round.
Okay.
Still haven't been able to figure out how to get Amazon to change it. But man. When we jump off, I'd love to send you a copy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would love that. Well, I appreciate you being here, and thank you so much. It's been awesome.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.